Okay, so the Czech Republic has always stood firmly in our corner. For decades, it has been one of Israel's most reliable allies. Personally, I visited the Czech Republic several times and fell in love with the country. I've been keeping close tabs on Czechia's responses since October 7th, and no surprises, the Czech Republic stands with Israel. Throughout, it has continued to vote with Israel and the US against the landslide of one-sided UN resolutions. But today, a radical left-wing fringe is trying to chip away at the Czech solidarity with Israel. They are importing lies, Hamas lies, pushed by much of the global media and so-called humanitarian organizations. And then you have our friends, the politicians, Macron, Starmer, Sanchez, Albanese, and so on, who will do anything to placate their ultra-progressive and Muslim electorates. In the Czech Republic, there's this leftist fringe magazine called Alarm that has shaped Hamas's lies into what it calls an open letter. Just skim it, and you'll see that it's not an open letter, but open libel. It states accusations as facts and hides the evidence and context that don't fit the narrative. It alleges deliberate starvation and targeted killing of journalists, while completely ignoring that Israel has delivered massive volumes of aid into Gaza. And there is the undeniable photographic evidence of the United Nations holding back aid distribution. Even worse, it also leaves out Hamas's theft and coercion, their deliberate embedding among civilians, and the fact that journalists in question were all closely tied to Hamas. Some were outright Hamas members. This isn't journalism. It's activism renamed journalism that claims opinions as fact and turns them into false blame. Quoting propaganda and getting a bunch of people to sign on it doesn't make it true. This is why I call the alarm piece what it is: hateful libel.
Obviously, that claim is 100% false, totally absurd. Israel clears large volumes of food, water, and medical aid into Gaza and opens crossings to enable deliveries. The breakdown is inside Gaza, beginning with the United Nations that has essentially weaponized itself against Israel. It keeps thousands of cleared truckloads at outdoor distribution points inside Gaza for days and weeks. Numerous reporters have documented this with photographs and videos. There was another report just yesterday. Massive amounts of aid just lying there because no one will distribute it. So they are partially to blame for any hunger in Gaza. But then they point the finger at Israel. Next, Hamas. Once any aid is on its way, Hamas and associated gangs steal or divert it to control civilians. The UN's own operational data shows that roughly 80% of in-transit aid since May 19th were intercepted. It's then hoarded and resold by Hamas at prices that are typically 300 to 500% above market. To bypass Hamas, the US and Israel backed the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to move aid via secured direct distributions when the standard pipeline stalled. Since late May 2025, when it began operating, the GHF has distributed over 120 million meals. But it isn't enough, and Hamas is doing everything it can to make the GHF fail. More appalling, the UN and other anti-humanitarian organizations are also trying to stop the GHF because it circumvents them and goes against their anti-Israel agenda. So yes, there is starvation in Gaza, but not nearly on the scale reported by much of the media. The responsibility lies squarely with Hamas and its supporters. It's ludicrous, absolutely crazy to claim otherwise. Before we go on, there's one other crucial point to make related to the starvation claims that's conveniently and intentionally swept under the rug. Israelis are incredibly diverse, ethnically, culturally, and ideologically. But all of us cherish our Western democratic values and would never permit forced starvation. Even if a government tried to make it official policy, there is no way they'd be able to execute their plans. A vast majority of IDF soldiers, our children, our spouses, ourselves, would refuse such unlawful orders, and commanders would refuse to issue them. The public would flood the streets far beyond anything we have seen. Look at the recent mass protests calling for the return of the hostages. Over 1 million people came out. Not because they want Hamas to remain. There isn't a single Israeli that doesn't want to see Hamas gone for good. But because saving the hostage comes first for a very large swath of Israelis, even at a tremendous price. There is no majority and not even a tenable minority that would support mass starvation. Once again, the claim is utterly false, confusing tragedy with intent. Gaza is an urban battlefield. Hamas embeds fighters, weapons, and command posts amongst civilians and civilian sites. Journalists are in danger for the same reason civilians are, because Hamas turns neighborhoods into shields. More than that, journalists can usually choose to leave. If they are embedded with Hamas, it's almost definitely because they choose to be so. In fact, in most, if not all, of the documented cases, the journalists cited were tightly connected to Hamas or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Some of them using their press status to support operations, and others were actual active operatives. That's right, actual terrorists. The few tragic accidents, aren't any evidence of a policy as claimed in the letter. A policy requires proof of intent, orders, and lots of planning. The letter nor reality show any of this. If you want the truth about the targeting journalists' claim, look at who they were tied to, where they were, and the exact time of each strike, instead of repeating malicious propaganda. The Czech Republic has a long history of standing with Israel, and it won't be rewritten by noise or libel from the radical fringe. A concerned Czech contact wrote to me, disgusted and disheartened by the alarm letter, and asked me if I could help raise awareness of it. That's what I'm doing now, and I pray it helps. To anyone who's watching or listening, please pass this along. I am confident in the Czech people to continue to see through the dark fog. But it's incumbent on all of us to do what we can to prevent this open libel cancer from metastasizing further, as it has in so much of the rest of the world. Someone once said that truth does not die when lies are told. I'll add that truth dies with silence, so we cannot allow ourselves to keep quiet.